Hey, it's Joanna Wiehe here from copyhackers.com, and you are listening to the 360 Entrepreneur with Jan Ilunga.
This is episode 162, and in this one, we talk about hacking copywriting and landing pages. Here we go.
Welcome to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast, the show for entrepreneurs and small business owners who dream big and want to do bigger. Join some of the world's top entrepreneurs, internet marketers, and best-selling authors as they share their inspiring stories, their struggles, and give actionable tips that will help you build, grow, and promote your online business. Here's your host, Yanni Lunga.
Hey there, how's it going? Welcome to an action-oriented episode of the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast. And this is really one of the episodes where you need some pen and paper or open Evernote or even sit in front of your computer and open up your landing page builder. Because today we talk about two things, copywriting and landing pages. And we are joined by somebody who is so knowledgeable on both topics. And I'm talking about Joanna Wiehe from copyhackers.com. And really, she has so many great golden nuggets she shares. And the most exciting things about that is that the advice she shares is advice that you can implement right away. So that's why I said if you use a landing page builder, make sure to open that up and change things as you listen to Joe and I. The show notes for today's episode are at yanilunga.com/episode 162. Okay, here is the interview with Joanna Wiehe from copyhackers.com. Hey everybody, today we are joined by an incredible guest expert and she's super fun, so I'm sure you're gonna get valuable information and also you're gonna get some good laughs. She's a copywriter and copywriting expert who helps you promote non-scuzzy writing that sells. She's also the founder of copyhackers.com, the go-to platform for entrepreneurs and content creators who really want to write better copy. She's appeared on a bunch, and I mean a bunch of publications, websites, podcasts like Entrepreneur, ProBlogger, Copyblogger, and Kissmetrics. And guess what? She's here. I'm so excited to welcome on the show. You're here already, Joanna Wiehe. Hey, Joanna, how's it going?
Hey, it's going really well, but that's intimidating what you just said. I hope people get just a fraction out of this, of what you've said. So anyway, yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I guess that's a great way not to put you on the spot, huh?
No kidding.
No, well, jokes aside, Joe, may I call you Joe?
Absolutely, yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here with us. And before we dive into copywriting and copy hackers, I have to ask you because I'm always curious. You have a pretty international name and last name, and I remember you had told me, and it's also you heard it, guys, in the bumper is pronounced Wiebe. So I thought it was like Wiebe. I thought it was like in German. So can you tell us a little bit more about your background? We're just curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be, if you were my grandmother, you would say Wiebe,
Okay.
which is, of course, yeah, the German side of it, right? Low German, I think, is where we were, what we spoke or what my family would have spoken. Plautdeutsch, is that how it's said? Um, yeah, that's the background, but of course I'm Canadian.
Right.
So I've got, yeah, like any Canadian, I've got a name from some other place. But yeah, that's the background. Half German, as I understand it. I mean, it's incredible the things that I learn as I get older. The stuff that when you're little and you ask your parents something and they give you like a quick answer, like just the easiest
Yeah.
answer for them because they're busy, but for you it's like the answer, like that's you believe it and that's it. So I learned growing up that I was half German, half Russian, and I was like, okay, cool, that's it, that's what I am. And then half German, half Russian on my dad's side. And then I learned I was Irish on my
Okay.
biological mother's side. Almost none of that is true. In
Oh.
fact, They said Russian, but they meant Ukrainian. But it was just like
Okay.
easier to say Russian or something, because I think I would
Yeah.
have asked too many questions if they went into something else. Like, what does that mean? Where's the Ukraines? Things like that. So in fact, it's my dad's side is German and Ukrainian. With there was like a period of Siberia happening in there. I don't know. And then my bio mom is actually Finnish, not Irish
All
at all.
right.
I know. So I was working at an Irish pub when I was like 19, and that was around the time that I learned I was Finnish, like had Finnish, not Irish in me, and I felt very conflicted.
There must have been like, yeah, look at this, fake Irish who claims to be Irish, and she's actually like anything but Irish. She's a bit Finn, German,
Yeah.
Ukrainian, and of course Canadian. I know that you live in beautiful Vancouver, so British Columbia, West Coast, right?
Yeah, Vancouver Island actually. Yeah, but it's the west coast of Canada in British Columbia, so it's a vacation destination for a lot of people. It's a pretty chill, really beautiful, actually. I know everybody says their area of the world is beautiful, and they're usually right, unless you're from Saskatchewan. Sorry, Saskatchewan.
Oh, ouch.
Saskatchewan is very plain. No, I love people from Saskatchewan. It's just going there is everybody knows. It's not the greatest place to be. It's very, very flat. But here on Vancouver Island, it's very natural. There's like trees and mountains and cougars in the woods and stuff like that, which is bad, but just stay away from those. But yeah, it's a nice area to be in. Sunny a lot of the time, almost never snows. It's nice for Canada.
Nice. No, that definitely
Yeah.
sounds nice. Thank you so much for telling us a bit more about your cultural background. You're really
Sure.
international. And I'm
Sure.
curious if you can spend a moment to tell us more about your baby,
Mm.
copyhackers.com. So I mentioned it in the intro. So how did you come up with the idea of copyhackers.com? And also, in case there are some people here with you and I, Joe, who don't know anything about copy hackers, if you can tell them what copy hackers can do for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So Copy Hackers is as you mentioned, it's a place where startups, the marketers that work at startups, the content creators, the copywriters themselves, the founders, and a lot of like smaller startups definitely, and bigger ones too, go to learn how to basically to use their words. So how do you write to get people to act,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it's part of everything that we do in business, everything we do. I mean, Anne Hanley has the book Everybody Writes,
Right.
and it's so true, right? Because everything you do is based on, outside of like us sitting here having this podcast, but even the podcast is organized, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
still a structure to it that's usually pretty narrative. So you've got the ability, or well, you can choose. Are you going to use your words to move people to act, or are you just going to throw stuff out there and see what happens? And few startups actually have the resources to just keep throwing stuff out there and seeing what happens. So you have to work harder with what you've got, and we've all got words at our disposal. We can all use our words better, and so that's what we do. We teach people how to do exactly that, how to write persuasive copy. Increasingly, we're helping people also figure out how to write better like content,
Mm-hmm.
because content marketing is of course so huge, and there are a lot of questions there, and we have been doing a lot of content marketing over the years at Copy Hackers too. So that's what we do. We were born out of really a hacker news sort of thing. So anybody who's familiar with hacker news, it's where like tech startups kind of hang out, right? Like the developers in particular from the tech startups, it's where they share ideas and
Mm-hmm.
show each other things. And so my partner Lance and I were pretty involved on Hacker News. Lance was more involved than I was, and people needed copy help there. Startups were posting their websites, and so I would give them feedback, and that eventually turned into people saying, well, hey, why don't you like write an ebook or something to teach me how
Mm-hmm.
to do this stuff? And so I was like, okay. So I did, and yeah, and that's how we ended up creating Copy Hackers, which was originally just a little blog where we'd had like I think two or three light posts that I'd written, and um, of ebooks, 450-page ebooks, and we launched on Hacker News, and it took off. It went to the top of the Hacker News page, like the main page, which
Mm-hmm.
is the news page, which is pretty cool. It stayed up there for a while too. So we sold tons of ebooks in like a 3-day period there. We saw some really cool people. Everybody's cool, of course. We saw like names like Dharmesh Shah buying the ebooks and stuff. So we were like, okay, this is cool. Maybe there's something here. And that's essentially how Copy Hackers was born.
Love it. Well, luckily you really followed the feedback you got and took action, because copyhackers.com is really a valuable platform, and you told it you have blog posts, you have ebooks, there is also some other ways to collaborate with you, and I'll definitely gonna ask you more about that later on. Now I want to ask you about something that you often blog and talk about, and you say that every piece of a marketing campaign has one job. So I'm curious, Joe, can you tell all of us what do you mean by that, and what that job is, especially for all the people who are here with you and I, who maybe are planning a marketing campaign as they're listening to you and I?
Yeah, absolutely. So, after doing this for 12 plus years, which might not sound like a lot, but
No,
it's a lot,
yeah, and in internet years also, internet years and
right?
copywriting years is like, yeah, a
I'm
lot.
like 100 years old in those years. Yeah, I've been doing it a long time. So, and in that time, you start to see the same sort of challenges again and again and again. And one of those big challenges is when people are looking to, a lot of times we're looking to fix what's broken because we only have so much time in the day to work on things. And so you're not going to rewrite a page that you don't think is broken.
Right.
You'll leave it there, right? Keep moving on. And so when you do want to fix a thing that's broken, let's say you see that you've got an ad, you're using AdWords. Let's say you're doing a marketing campaign where you're using AdWords ads, you're driving people to your landing page that's designed for that ad. Is it designed for the ad? Is the first question. It should be. But yeah, it's so you have to look. You could say, okay, our AdWords aren't performing, or this campaign isn't performing well, and then you all sit down around a table and you look at the ad and you look at the landing page and you start like throwing ideas out there, like, oh, the headline's bad, or oh, there's too much copy on the page, or whatever it is. But you just kind of throw ideas randomly out there and hope that you basically get consensus on one, like somebody else agrees with you on one, and then okay, now you're going to go fix that. But how do you know that was the thing to fix? And again, you only
Right.
have so much time to do it. So I have found that the best way to try to identify what needs improving in a campaign, as you call it, in whatever that flow is that you're setting up to move like someone from a prospect to a lead, and a lead to a trial start or a customer, or whatever it is that you whatever it is, if you're in e-commerce versus in SaaS or something. um, at each step, so each step in that process, there's a job that has to be done, a sort of handoff to move people on to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
But within each one of those steps, there are more things within it. So within an AdWords ad, you've got multiple. I mean, you don't have a lot of words there, but you have a couple lines. Each has really their own sort of job to do. And then when you drive that ad to a landing page. Okay, the landing page headline has one job to do, and that is to hold the person on the page.
Mm-hmm.
So we might look at a headline and say, oh, the job of my AdWords headline is to sell people on the thing that the AdWords ad was talking about. So our problem with this is that the headline isn't selling. So then you try to rewrite the headline to sell, but that wasn't actually the headline's job in the first place. It's to
Mm-hmm.
hold people in that particular case. Just hold them. And there's lots of ways to do it. You have to unpack that. There's a lot of different ways to do that. But that is, in fact, what you're trying to get it to do. And then you move through each element on the page, and each one has its own job to do. So a form field has the job of getting people to fill in that form field,
Mm-hmm.
period, right? So if it's not getting filled in, that means that the field is probably not doing its job. There might be something happening before the field that wasn't doing its job too, but you have to start, like, if you can give every element a single job to do, just one job. Instead of trying to give it the 300 we always try to give it, or instead of looking at like a page as if it's one big thing with just a couple little things in it, but really give every element a job to do, then if that job's not being done, you can say, okay, well, who was supposed to do that job? Oh, the button was supposed to do that job. Okay, well, let's go look at the button and see what the button might be doing wrong. And that is just it's a shorter path to fixing the problems that we've got on our pages. It's really just like what's broken and fix it, which is like kind of obvious, but people don't do it. They just look
Yeah.
at the whole instead of the pieces and the pieces of the pieces.
Yeah, no, I think it's like you said, Joe. I think it's really counterintuitive because, yeah, we kind of tend to look at a landing page as a big thing, like you just said, and we don't really break it into chunks, or we don't look at the single elements specifically. So you already told us about a few things. You told us about what the headline should be doing if we have a form, and we should have it if it's a landing page, what that should be doing, and then there may be, for example, a headline. And I believe, is it correct that you also have an ebook that talks about the critical copy elements on high converting landing pages?
Yeah, I wrote that with the Unbounce people. So you can get that if you Google Unbounce Joanna Wiebe. A few things will come up because I've done a few things with them, thankfully. But yeah, that ebook is one of them. And yeah, it's just you'll land on a landing page, which will be following a lot of better practices in landing page copywriting and design. So pay attention for one. There's an education just in observing things,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, then you can download that absolutely free ebook there. But yeah, that's beginning to end how to optimize your landing page copy.
Great. And to make this even easier for all of you who are here with Joanna Wiebe and I, just go to the show notes page, and like always, you're gonna find the links to
Oh, cool.
copyhackers.com, the book, and everything else Joe and I talk about here in this podcast. Okay, Joe, if we kind of dissect a landing page, you've already touched on a few elements. Can you kind of take your magnifying lens or glass and take us through a landing page? So if we were to kind of look at the anatomy of a landing page, obviously there are different types of landing pages, but if we look at the elements on high converting landing pages, so you just told us that in the book or the ebook there is everything one needs to know from A to Z, but still, what are some of the things we really have to keep in mind when we are planning or we are just about to publish our landing pages?
Yeah, I mean that is there's a list there. But the core things are around, so for the average landing page, a landing page by definition is a place where people land. So to land somewhere you have to have come from somewhere else,
Mm-hmm.
which means that you were compelled by that previous place to click and arrive on the landing page. So what was happening on the previous page and what of that needs to appear on the landing page to make you feel like you've arrived at the right place. And that's just message matching, right? That's just making
Mm-hmm.
sure that Ollie Gardner, again over at Unbounce, he talks about having basically filling a bucket and then emptying the bucket. So
Right.
when you're like, right, you're writing, let's say an email. Let's say you write an email where you're trying to get people um, to buy some coupon thing, right? Like you're selling something.
Yeah, of
Um,
course, that famous coupon thing. Yeah.
the coupon thing. Everybody has that, the coupon thing. So you write, you're selling a pair of shoes in this email. They can get these great shoes. You're giving them reasons to get those shoes, and then the call to action on there is save 50% on brown shoes. When you click through and you land on the landing page, what are some of the things you expect to see? And if you use the kind of bucket idea, things that you would take from the email and throw in the bucket to carry with you to the landing page are save 50%
Mm-hmm.
shoes and brown shoes,
Right.
because that was what you said in around that call to action or the place where they clicked. So put the 50% in the bucket, put the brown shoes in the bucket, take your bucket, walk over to your landing page, dump that stuff on the top of your landing page. So you should
Mm-hmm.
have a save 50%, and you should have brown shoes at the top of that landing page. Now, that's a really obvious example because we can see those, like it's really, really clear. But there's always going to need to be that message match, always, no matter what you're doing. When you're creating a landing page, you have to take the elements people expect and you have to put them on there. And a lot of the times, we fail at this because we think we don't have to be that explicit. We can
Mm-hmm.
imply a lot. People already know, right? So if we just say save at Zappos at the top of the page, then that's all they need to see. Well, no, that's not going to do quite the job that you need to do, because even though Zappos might mean shoes to people, um, that's asking people to do the work of figuring that out. Why
Mm-hmm.
should your reader figure out what you mean? Why don't you just put down there what they already indicated they want anyway? You said save 50% on brown shoes. When I land on the page, it means that I cared about saving 50% on brown shoes. So put that at the top, not save at Zappos or whatever other thing there might be that implies something. Just forget implying, just say it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's core for creating a great landing page. There has to be message match there, and then then there's so many other things to consider, right? When you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
write a really great landing page, by the time you drive somebody to that page, you should have an awareness of their stage of awareness. So
Right.
this is something that copywriters care a lot about, and it's a topic that doesn't get talked about that often outside of copywriting, and that is this concept of stages of awareness. um, so how aware is your prospect of, and then there's a variety of things. So how aware are they aware of their pain alone? Are they aware that there's a solution to their pain? Are they aware that your product is one of the solutions to their pain? And are they
Mm-hmm.
aware that your product is the solution to their pain? So those are, and then there's the stage that comes before all of that, which is they're completely unaware. Um,
Right.
so those are 5 stages of awareness, and you have to be aware when you're writing of what stage of awareness your prospects. That means not just anybody arriving on your page, but the people you're really trying to convert, your actual audience, the ones who will buy from you, who will be happy with the product, who will refer other people to you, the people you really want as your customers. You're writing for them on
Mm-hmm.
that landing page. But at that point, the people in that group that are arriving on that landing page, what stage of awareness are those people in? And with that in mind, if you're like, okay, well, they know about their pain, they know that there are solutions to their pain, but they don't yet know about us. Like, and so that could be for kind of a longer tail keyword phrase or a non-branded keyword phrase that you might be using for your AdWords ads. And you write the ad that speaks to that, drives them to a landing page. Your brand hasn't been mentioned yet because they're not product aware, they're only solution aware. And now you have to introduce them to your product as one of the solutions that they should be considering. So knowing that, as soon as you're like, okay, well, when you can figure out the stage of awareness, then you can say, well, what should we lead with then?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, message matching has to be there, but if they're not yet product aware, you have to just talk about the solution and then pull them into your product. And you don't have to get into incentives yet. You don't have to get into necessarily, well, it depends. There's certain types of testimonials you want to have on the page if they're just getting introduced to your product.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be a lot of things that you won't have to put on your page yet. It might mean that it's not even a good sales page or not a good sales page, it's not a good page to sell on because they're not at a stage of awareness that is right for selling yet. So they might just
Right.
be a good person to bring in for a lead, then nurture them, make them aware of your product and that it is the product to buy through an email campaign, at the end of which you once you've made them not only product aware but aware that your product is the best solution for their pain, then you drive them to a landing page that is for product aware people, that's all about an offer. It's making it like where you use scarcity and urgency and a lot of social proof and a lot of those persuasion techniques that we talk about. But you have to know before you can figure out what technique to pull out and what copy needs to be on the page. you first need to know what stage of awareness they are in. And so that is a core part of figuring out, of writing your copy for a landing page at all. So it doesn't just come down to, oh, I need a headline, oh, I need a bullet list, oh, I need a form and a button and a testimonial under it, even though that's pretty standard and probably going to work relatively decently. But you need to know what goes in the headline, what then goes in those bullets, what the offer is to get them to enter their email address, or depending if they're product aware or at a place where they're ready to buy, whatever that offer is, or whatever goes into that call to action. But I hope that that's clear, that you just have to first start by figuring out where they're at, which seems obvious again, but shockingly few people actually do it.
Whew, where to start from? Joe, my headphones are still on fire. You've already dropped so many value bombs here. No, I think you made it very clear that there needs to be some real strategic thinking behind every single piece of the puzzle. I mean, you made the example of the coupon. I think that was already a great example. And I think that part right there is something that probably many people don't even really think about when they're thinking about creating a landing page. I think they focus more on what you said, like, yeah, make sure that I have the headline, I have the bullet points, I have the form, I may have some testimonials. And I also like the fact that you talked about the stages of awareness, because that's so critical. And the more we are strategic and deliberate about those, the more likely people are to take the step we want them to take. And a
Yes.
question I have for you, Joe, is, and I know this is another thing, obviously, that you really preach in your copywriting gospels, and is what makes a click-worthy call to action? What is it made of? When we're thinking about, okay, we want to create a call to action, what do we have to think about? I mean, you have already touched on some of the things there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's a couple of things to think about. One, call to action. When we think of it as a call to action, which usually translates into a button on a page or a text link in an email, when we think about it as a call to action, I think I have seen at least that people jump to saying, okay, well, what's the action that they're going to take? Okay, the action is that they're going to book a demo. So, okay, then the call to action is book a demo.
Mm-hmm.
So they write that in as the call to action. And in fact, that is the action that they'll be taking, but that's not the point. That's not the value. So we like to talk about calls to value.
Mm-hmm.
So it changes depending on where people are in the funnel, if you need a call to value versus a call to action, because the closer a person gets to actually converting and paying, or going through, let's say, the steps of a form or something like that, you may need to switch over back to, a call to action, because there comes a point at which you don't have to sell anymore, and you do just have to help people get the task done of filling out a form,
Right.
entering their credit card information, and then clicking the button that says, okay, add to cart or buy now, or whatever that thing might be that they absolutely need to hear those words. But then prior to that, when you're getting people to, you're kind of pulling people in, that's where we recommend you have a call to value, where you're more completing the phrase with the button copy that you write, or the call to action copy that you write. You would complete the phrase, I want to. So I want to blank. So when it comes to booking a demo, let's say on a lead gen page, I want to book a demo. It's pretty rare for a person to want to book a demo. That's
Right.
not the desirable thing, right? They know they're going to need to do the demo thing, and there's goodness in that demo, but they don't want the first thing that they want is not the demo. The thing that they want is the value that comes out of the
The
demo.
demo.
So, right, I want to see the product in action, or I want to see the product live, or I want to see how this will work for me live. And so that becomes your call to action instead. Worth testing, because it doesn't always mean absolutely it will work that way. But that is a really good rule of thumb to follow when people are just kind of being pulled into your brand, or even pulled into the sales funnel. Lead with a call to value, and then as you move them further in, then start helping them move really, really quickly and swiftly by just getting through the calls to action. So a click-worthy call to action thinks about where the person is in that process, and then decides, do they need just the button that's going to help them get a job done immediately if there is a sense of work that has to be completed, you just want to move people through it really quickly, or do they need to still have that value of what's going to happen reinforced? And those are the two ways to go, and then you'll decide if you need that call to value that has I want to blank, or if you need the call to action, which is more of that like submit order type thing where they
Right.
absolutely need to know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for bringing up and making the distinction between call to action and call to value. I think that's again something. I think that this whole conversation, Joe, really is really helping all of us understand a little bit more what goes into conversion. So it's not only the color we choose or the that one word we choose, but it's really the reason why we choose it in the first place. So all that this is really like a circle coming together. What you told us earlier, that it's important to know where a person is at that specific moment in the 5 stages of awareness. And obviously if a person is in one stage rather than the other, then that is going to have an impact on the type of action we should
Yep.
aiming to have them take. And if we
Yes.
step away for a moment from landing pages and we sweep the conversation a little bit and talk about emails. I know that
Mm.
email lists are so critical. We have talked about that in the past in quite many episodes. And you know, Joe, since you're here, I'd like to tap into your brain for a couple more minutes. I'm sure the people who are joining you and I have now are listening to you and I with a smile. They probably have taken a bunch of notes. So I wanted to ask
Okay.
you for your copywriting tips when it comes to email. So obviously everybody wants to have more email subscribers, more people opening their emails, reading the content, taking action. So what are some of your copywriting tips when it comes to emails?
Yeah, one of the bigger tips is a mindset shift, and that is that when you email people, it's going to be valuable to them. So getting people onto your list shouldn't make you feel like, oh, I'm annoying them by asking them to sign up. And when they're on that list, you shouldn't feel like, oh, if I email them, it'll be annoying to them.
Right.
I think a lot of people are held back by that. I know when I first started out, I was scared to email my list because I'd heard one or two people say, like, oh, you email too much. And then that
Right.
sticks in your head, and you're like, oh my gosh, maybe I do email too much. But don't listen to that. As long as you're providing value, that's what your email is there to do. It's such a powerful channel. Like, you have to use
Right.
it as best you can and get people into that list. So, getting people on your list, I mean, there are a variety of tips there, right? A lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
We just did a webinar with the people at Lead Pages, with Tim
Right.
Page over there, and he gave some great tips. So I couldn't possibly cover them all, but some of the bigger ones for him that, and which we've also seen, um, are to get people onto your list. Just do things like giving them a really easy, quick lead magnet, or kind of opt-in bribe is the way a lot of people describe it too.
Right.
Like, so we think, oh, we have to give away a big ebook, but in fact, so a lot of tests show, and it depends on your audience, of course, but a lot of tests show that giving people the easier thing is often the better way to get them onto your list. So the
Mm-hmm.
easiest, it's hard to write an ebook, and the effect is that it's also a little bit hard to read an ebook too. It
Right.
takes sitting down, not doing other work, and like consuming perhaps 50 pages, 60, 100 pages of written information that you have to kind of stay involved in. We all know in the back of our heads that there's work to do in that, but there's not so much work to do in a checklist. So if you
Exactly.
give them, right, this lead magnet that is really easy, like a checklist, but if you give them a lead magnet for the thing that's like where it's really easy, where they can imagine themselves entering their email address, getting it, and quickly using it, and even like sending it off or printing it out or whatever it is, and having it as a quick reference, that's shown for a lot of people, again, always test wherever you can.
Right.
But that's a great way to get people onto your list. Content upgrades is another great way to get people onto your list. So you can do more with the visitors that are already coming to your site, even if there are only a few of them. And now, once those people get on your list, then those people become the people that are going to tell the world about you and help bring that traffic back to your site, and help further grow your list. So what are some tips then to engage those people and get them to open your emails? One, you have to keep them engaged. So as soon as your list goes cold, as soon as you stop emailing them regularly, and that means, every 3 or 4 days, really, when it comes down to it, as soon as you stop doing that, they go cold and it's hard to re-engage them. So it's usually a
Right.
really good strategy just to have a basic content like list in mind. You could put together a quick like spreadsheet that just to use the rows, or just like a bullet list of the different things that your audience wants to hear about and that you can help them learn about. So, and that might be, oh, hey, I was just on a podcast. Come over here and listen. We talked about these 3 things. Or, hey, last year I was on this podcast and this is what we talked about. Come here and listen. But just doing that work to keep communicating with them, providing them with value. You're not sending out BS. You're sending out real stuff they are actually going to get value out of. And even if they don't always click through, at least they're hearing from you and you're the person in their
Right.
inbox that they keep hearing from. And eventually they'll unsubscribe. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay, as long as they don't call you
Right.
spam. So don't do anything spammy, but they're allowed to engage with you for a while and then feel they've had enough and go away. They might come back later, but they're allowed to do that. So be okay with that. But one, yeah, keep them engaged. And then to get them to open those emails, we found that depending on what the content of your email is, your subject line will change, obviously, right? So, and I don't mean like the words, but like the actual message. So if you're sending something about a blog post you've just written where you want people to read the blog post, to click through to read, what can you say in that subject line to get them to open the email? And let's not forget the from name, which when you're reading on mobile is even more important than your subject line. So
Right.
your from name, you can test in a lot of platforms. I know MailChimp lets you test your from name. So a variety of platforms absolutely do. It's worth a test to see which one gets people to open more. Because in a lot of cases, we would say, like for our blog posts, either Joanna or Joanna at Copy Hackers performs really well. But when we're doing like a sales email, where it's the last email, we might need to, like the last one where it's like, hey, this offer closes tonight, or like in 4 hours, come get it now. We might need a different from name so people don't feel. It depends, right? But that from name is huge. The subject line is also a really big deal when people are reading your email on their browser or like on their laptop. And that subject line should be, we have found best results when that subject line sounds most like it's coming from a real human being. Like, right, which makes
Yeah.
sense, but like where it doesn't look like it's written by a corporation or some marketing manager
More
somewhere.
conversational.
Yeah, light, where it's like it doesn't have like, so title case, so
Yeah.
between sentence case and title case and like all lowercase, we do ours in lowercase across the board, like even the first word is lowercase, because we want it to stand out in an inbox, because so many email subject lines are either title case, where every word has a capital letter to begin, or they're sentence case, where the first word has a capital letter. We do lowercase, and it's really up to you to figure out what that is. But the job of that subject line is to get noticed, right? It has to get noticed in order to get the email opened. So if people aren't noticing it, then that's a problem. So make it noticeable. Don't do things that are spammy, though. So making it noticeable means make it look like it's coming from somebody that you trust, like a friend who would write in lowercase, let's say, because they're jotting something off. And rather than like thinking, like a friend doesn't think thoroughly through the subject line they're going to write for
Yeah.
another friend, right? They just like throw something down. And that's the same kind of idea here. Of course, they're going to be more strategic than just throwing something down, though. And then the question is whether you make it long, medium length, or really short. And I know I wrote a book on this with GetResponse, the email platform. And they found out of like, I don't know, a trillion data points or something ridiculously huge, that the best subject lines, the ones that get the most opens, are either really short or really long. And that, of course, the really good reason for that to be true is that those are the ones that get noticed, because everybody
Mhm.
else has been taught, all these marketers out there have been taught that you should have about, a max of 60 characters in your subject line. So everybody's kind of trying to squeeze in as much as they can in about 55 characters, which means everybody's subject lines are the same length when we're looking at marketing emails. So your job is to make sure you don't look like every other email in an inbox. So either write a really long subject line that like goes well beyond what your competitors, quote unquote competitors, they're competing for attention in an inbox. So they are in fact your competitor there. If they're going medium length, go either super short, like 2 words, or really long. And that's a way to get noticed. I mean, there are 1,000 tips for email open rates, like to
Right,
increase
yeah.
those. And of course, you could have all the tricks in the world, and I wouldn't recommend you think of them as tricks, but rather strategies or techniques. But if they open up the email and there's poor message match there, then again, it didn't work, right? So
Yeah.
your subject line might have done the job of getting people to open it, but if the opening lines of that email body copy itself don't match what people expected, then those lines aren't doing their job, and people will go away and they'll feel like you've been tricking them, and they'll
Hmm.
unsubscribe. So there's more to it than just opening emails, but there are definitely some really cool tactics to get those open. And I know it would take like an eternity to talk through them all, so I don't want to like go endlessly.
No, well, Joe, I think that you already share some very valuable advice here with us, and I also like the fact that you stress the importance of really testing things out with everything: landing pages, email subject lines. The even you told us even about the from, and that's actually pretty interesting that you experimented with that, because, for example, personally, it's something that I have always thought of, like using that my personal name, so jan@janilunga.com. And I've always thought that, yeah, it feels somehow, it sounds more personal than, support at, or
Yeah.
info at, or
Yeah.
questions at. But it's interesting that you guys over at Copy Hackers, you have also been deliberate in experimenting with the from. So if you've been here with Joe and I, you have gotten quite some food for thoughts. You have taken some notes. Again, make sure to check out the show notes, where you find the links to all the resources and the things Joe and I have talked about. And Joe, to wrap up this conversation, I'd like to ask you, we've mentioned copyhackers.com. You are on Twitter at copyhackers. If people would like to get in touch with you, maybe ask you a question, or thank you, or have you coached them, what is the quickest way to do that, or ways?
Yeah, the best way is, well, Twitter is the fastest way. I don't check DMs ever, but if you just tweet me at copyhackers with an S, that's a good way. Otherwise, copyhackers.com. If we engage in comments on a blog post we have there, that's a great option. Alternatively, I'm available by email, of course, Joanna at copyhackers.com, and I'm happy to hear from people.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. And of course, if you've been here with Joe and I, and you're from Saskatchewan, make sure to write to her and let her know that Saskatchewan is great. Joe, thank you so much for being here with us, telling us more about your background, Copy Hackers, and for sharing some copywriting tips with us. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
All right, we are back. Joe, thank you so much. This conversation with you was so inspiring, so much fun, and so educational. I really appreciate you taking the time for sharing your wisdom with all of us here on the 360 Entrepreneur podcast. And I told you it was going to be a very action oriented episode. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. And we talked about a couple of tools we mentioned. And there is a tool that I've been really using over the last couple of months, that I've been really falling in love with. And I've actually mentioned that a few weeks ago. It's called Thrive Landing Pages, and is a tool that allows you to create professional looking landing pages, sales pages, thank you pages, webinar registration pages, and all those kind of marketing pages your online business needs. You can create all of those with a simple drag and drop interface. So even if you don't know the first thing about coding, you can still create great pages with Thrive landing pages. Not only that, it also comes with a wallet-friendly plan because it has a one-time payment of $67 for a single site and $97 for a limited site, which means that you paid once and you get lifetime access to continued updates because the Thrive team keeps updating the plugin all the time, which is fantastic. So in the show notes over at yanilunga.com/episode 162, you find the links to everything Joe and I have talked about, plus the link to Thrive landing pages. I want to wrap up this episode with a quick reminder. The Podcast Success Summit is underway and the second week of the summit has just started. So in case you haven't heard about it, it's a digital conference with 80 speakers. It's for podcasters and those interested in podcasting, and it's taking place right now online. So you don't have to travel anywhere. You just need an internet connection and a device to access that. podcastsuccesssummit.net is the site where you can get free access to the sessions. In case you missed some of the past sessions, you can grab the VIP lifetime access pass that gives you lifetime access to every single session, and it also gives you a series of bonuses worth over $2,000. So in the show notes to this episode, you're gonna find the link to the Podcast Success Summit too. This is it for today. Thank you so much, like always, for your support, for making me, Joe, and the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast part of your day, part of your week, and I'll be back with you next week. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast. For more tips and tools, head over to www.yanilunga.com.